Hi, everybody. I hope you're all well and in good spirits. Today, I'm going to do two videos above the one I already did congratulating Chelsea on her Ironman win. One is about me being attacked for a comment I made on a platform and the ridiculousness of those attacks. The other one is an experience I had and witnessed um, regarding relations between Americanized Spanish-speaking youth and immigrant Spanish-speaking youth. Okay, so I'll start with the being attacked. I was reading an article about the Stockton serial killer, and it was on a social media platform, and I put a comment in there to the effect that I believe the serial killer is targeting homeless people because they got frustrated with government not doing nothing. Now, they probably had something in them already, and maybe that was the trigger. The reason I said that is because a lot of the news I've been seeing from across the state and from, left leaning and right leaning media outlets has been to the effect that communities are afraid, frustrated, and even angry at the lack of solutions that the politicians are proposing, coming up with, enacting, implementing. And so immediately I got a response, and the response was, I bet your mom and uncle didn't think you'd be this stupid when they birthed you. So I clicked on that person's profile, and they're a member of the LGBTQ community. And so I didn't want to stoop to their level. Um, and I kind of did initially by not insulting his mom. Well, um, saying they expected to have a dope of a son for something. I don't know what it was. But as far as him being LGBTQ, my comment was that, look, you're obviously LGBTQ. And you belong to a community that has made a name for itself standing up to bullying. And you're a horrible representation of that community. That's all I had to say about that. Someone else jumped on and said, Trumpers are stupid as fuck. And I'm like, damn, now I'm a Trumper because I said that I think the serial killer is targeting the homeless, possibly because of inaction on the part of politicians. And again, all the news stories I'm seeing are to the effect that people are fed up with the inaction. In fact, one story this one was out of Portland, compassion for the unhoused has turned into anger and frustration. That's how the story led, right? And so I respond that, these are the things I'm seeing. This is why I said this. It's not that I have a lack of compassion for the homeless, nor do I think they deserve, mistreatment for this. In fact, if folks have heard me, they've heard me say that they need equal services that we receive. Have someone pick up their garbage if they put it out so that it doesn't become an eyesore and everybody in the community suffers. That's an issue separate from housing them. While you figure out housing, you can try and keep where they're at clean so the community doesn't have to take that mental toll. To me, it was a win-win. A win for the community, a win for them. It brings the tension down, etc. So this person who belongs to a community that built a name for themselves against bullying didn't have any conversation for me. All he had was an attempt to bully me. And in the end, I was vindicated because the news now is less careful about who the victims are, and is actually running a lot of stories that homeless advocates are concerned the homeless are being targeted. Homeless advocates are generally not Trump supporters or conservatives. They're the lock them up, they're all drug addicts type. Um, the other thing is, I was called a conservative twat for explaining it. And like, again, I was never disrespectful, right? And, it became glaringly obvious that they were mad I said something about the politicians here in California. And then they would just repeat their comments. Trumpers are dumb as fuck. You're a conservative twat, right? They couldn't respond to the arguments I was making. And I think that's a lot of the problem that I see with people hurting in either direction. They've stopped thinking. I used to think it was solely people on the right that couldn't put together a comprehensive explanation of conservative policy tied to economics, tied to how it works. It was always their conservatism was based on, Joe Biden's an old guy who doesn't know where he's at. Kamala seems like a snake, etc., etc. It was never, these are my policies, these are why I defend them. It was always an attack on the other side. And to be honest with you, I've known people who have like a lot of money, and yet they don't feel like they could go to a fancy restaurant because they won't fit in. And they're not scared of anybody. Anyone on the streets wants to give them some action, they'll take it. But they won't go to some places because they feel like they don't fit in, like they wouldn't be welcome. And I think that goes to a video I made on class, because these dudes are people that treat people well, with respect. I don't know why they would feel that way, but like, I'll go to a fancy restaurant, and I'll go to a fancy restaurant dressed raggedy as hell, and treat the waiters with yes please, thank you, I would appreciate that, give a hefty tip when I leave, and that will speak for me, not how I look. And so I struggle to understand some of the views people have, because it seems to be contrary to their own interests. And so I'd always identified as liberal because I think I can explain racial inequities. I think I can explain how systemic racism has contributed to that. I can point to documents, the Cerrell report, Cerrell, government commission report on where to put incinerators. They ended up in Long Beach and Modesto, brown communities. That's what the government was told to do because it was the path of least resistance. That's racism. And so, they're still there. I don't know if both are still operating, but 2 years ago they were both still operating. And so I can explain how policies can help people, and I can do it using my own personal experience. I benefited from Pell Grants. I've had doors open for me because I took advantage of programs for at-risk youth that were funded by community block grants. And so even as I call out nonprofits, I do recognize that they've done good in other arenas if it's not related to the environment and related to social justice. But the way I see things is, you can't say, you're helping here and you're a great justice person, and then ignoring another lane, so to speak, stay in your lane, because they might be doing bad in that lane. And if you enable that because your lane is good, then you're being unjust to the other people. So I think I can explain it well. I think I can explain the benefits. I think I can explain the disbenefits of these liberal policies. So when I called out or not called out, but shared what I thought was the reason this serial killer was doing this and who he was targeting, which is also brown people. 5 of the 6 were brown people, Hispanic descent, Latinos, and being attacked for it, and being called a Trumper after I just shared who I am with you, and being given no discussion, just these attacks. I realized that, I thought it was just one side that did that, because maybe some of the folks that I talked to on the left were maybe a little bit more eloquent. But I do see a lot of folks just repeating what they've been indoctrinated with. And some of them are not even government folks. They work for nonprofits, but they've been indoctrinated with the mantra of government that it's become theirs, and in a way, they're supposed to be representing the community. But they've stopped thinking for themselves as well. I told those people attacking me, because I said that about the homeless. I said, I bet you guys are the type of people who are going to help the homeless by building a whole bunch of shelters in a black neighborhood, a barrio, a little Saigon, a little Cambodia, a little Iraq. You're going to put them all there and then want people to pat you on the back for helping the homeless, ignoring what you did to that black community, ignoring what you did to that brown community, that little Saigon, that little Cambodia, that little Iraq. And you can ignore it because it's not convenient to your narrative of being a justice person. And you'll notice who I left out of that. It'd be wealthy white folks that don't suffer none of this. They don't have to. We carry the burdens of the city for them. And they want praise for being just to the homeless. I want compassion for the homeless. I advocate, don't put them under freeways where they're breathing all that pollution. Don't put them in toxic sites like they're expendable. Homeless people have been so kind and compassionate to me that I don't think I could look at myself in the mirror if I was attacking them and hateful of them. That's I want to live by everybody's happiness. Homeless peoples, all ethnicities, all races, all socioeconomic classes. I think those white folks that are mad that they feel unsafe, that they feel scared, that some of their community has been killed by a small element of the homeless that is criminal or on drugs, because they're there. They're there in every ethnic group, in every societal realm, that exists, as well as good people. And I've always said I shun labels, and I always would say, well, I'm liberal, but I don't think I'm going to say that anymore. I think I'm just going to say, I have my own opinions, and depending on the issue, I can give it to you. I can probably assign a little bit of fault all the way around, including to myself. And but it'll be the truth, And I won't tell you I'm a liberal, or I wouldn't have told you I'm a liberal if I couldn't explain the policies. If I needed to attack Trump, this is what I would say. I would say when he came down that elevator, because I have friends, really good, close friends who I think would go above and beyond normal friendships for me, that are Trump supporters, strictly on 2A, but they back all the other BS and make excuses because they need to protect 2A, which is the Second Amendment, their right to bear arms. They like guns, right? They said he wasn't racist, and I said, look, when he came down that elevator and he said they're sending their rapists, their drug dealers, their killers, and some, I assume, are good, there's no other way to interpret that other than most of them. Most are fucked up. if you can only assume some of them are good. I don't know how well people comprehend things, how aware people are. It seems like not very much. I'm always surprised, especially with certain genres. They're supposed to be streetwise. How often they get played, but whatever. To each their own. Some people are willfully ignorant, and you just can't help them. Um, and so the then he said, "Well, that was in the beginning, but he's talking about immigrants." And I said, "Look, when those charges around that university he had came up, a judge was assigned to him who was as American as anyone else, born here, raised here, in the Midwest, I believe. Even he wasn't even part of an area where a lot of uh, Latino, Mexican, Hispanic community are gathered. I think he grew up as American as anyone else. And Trump didn't want him overseeing his trial because he was a Mexican. See, it didn't matter that he was born here. It didn't matter that he was a citizen. He was Mexican to Trump and not fit to try him. That's all I needed to know. And if folks can't just agree to fundamental truths of what happened, then I don't need to continue the conversation on other matters, because there's 8 billion people out here. I could be missing out on some of the most amazing people trying to fix things that might not be fixable because people are willfully ignorant. They don't want to know. And that was the case with those liberals who attacked me with all those names, all those slurs, all that disrespect to my family, simply because they thought I was criticizing their politicians and saying the homeless deserved what they were getting, which the latter was not the case. The first was. And that brings me to my other point. This city, it's been run by Democrats for a long time. The state has. I think Pete Wilson was probably the last Republican. I know Arnold came after him, but his policies were very liberal. And, Pete Wilson was a motherfucker to the raza. He was a motherfucker. And, even then, when he came after us, he pumped up the black community to support that Prop 187. And I told people, as soon as that shit passes, he's going to take away affirmative action, because now he divided and conquered. And that's what he did. And black folks were upset that it was taken. Some, I remember in the news, they lamented. He played us, he split us and played us. That shit happened. But since then, it's been democratically led. And so one of my responses, which only made them further think I was a Trumper, was, if you really think that Trump is to blame for something that has been getting worse over decades, despite hundreds of millions of dollars going to address the issue, then you're as dumb as you're calling anyone else if you think it's not your folks that messed this up. See, I think I gave, these folks too much credit, and they really don't, a lot of them just don't think for themselves either. And so they come on insulting people's parents, calling names, and that's the extent of the conversation they can give you. And I know I can rant on and on, so I'm going to stop and say and the reason is, you have to be impeccable with your word. Don't be a monkey mouth. I mean, if you're selling monkey mouth, that's all good, whatever. But personally, you should really think about the things you say, and if they make you or people that you yourself don't say you represent, but others may think you do. See, even in the Bible, I'm trying to not get too religious because I'm not that religious a person, but as I've gotten older, I've seen how all these lessons have actually played out and how they're true. And life experience has validated what I learned. And, I know that it bothers God more if you cause others to stumble than if you stumble yourself. And if you do it intentionally, um, he frowns upon that more than if you stumble on your own out of error. It,